The night was shattered by a scream that wasn't human. It was raw, primal terror that sliced through the silence and froze my blood. It was 3 a.m., and I bolted from my bed, heart hammering like it might break my ribs. I tore down the hallway to my mother's room, where I found her crumpled on the floor, clutching her chest. Her face was ghostly pale, her breath shallow and ragged, eyes wide with panic. "Mom, what's wrong?" I dropped to my knees, grabbing her wrist to check her pulse, just like the paramedics taught me after her last heart attack. But her wrist was bare. The heart monitor, that small device that had kept her alive for 8 months, was gone. "My monitor," she gasped, each word a struggle. "I can't. I don't know if my heart." I called 911, my hands shaking, but those 15 minutes waiting for the ambulance stretched into an eternity. My 82-year-old mother, disabled and frail, lay there, terrified, not knowing if her heart would give out. All because someone had stolen her lifeline. At the hospital, Dr. Ellis was livid when I told him. "Someone took her heart monitor? Do they realize she has severe arrhythmia? Without it, she could go into cardiac arrest, and we'd have no warning until it's too late." Mom survived that night, but just barely. The stress of losing her monitor had triggered dangerous, irregular heartbeats, landing her in the ICU for 3 days. I sat by her bed, watching machines beep where her device should have been, my anger simmering. When she was stable enough to talk, her voice was weak, laced with hurt. "I was in the garden yesterday, on my bench, watching the sunset," she said. Those moments were her sanctuary since Dad passed 2 years ago. Then that woman stormed over Margaret Collins, VYing papers, yelling about community violations. My jaw clenched. Margaret, our HOA president, was the neighborhood's self-appointed dictator, nicknamed Karen for her relentless power trips. She made our small community a nightmare for years. She pointed at my heart monitor. Mom continued, her hands trembling, and called it kid's toy. Said toys weren't allowed in common areas, that I was setting a bad example. I asked if she'd explain what it was. "Of course, sweetheart," she said, her voice breaking. I showed her my prescription bottle, my medical bracelet, even a manual from my purse. "I beg her to call you, or Dr. Ellis." Margaret's response? She laughed. "Old people always fake medical issues for special treatment," she sneered, then ripped the monitor off Mom's wrist, snapping the strap, and tossed it into her bag like trash. Mom tried to follow, but her bad hip slowed her down. By the time she reached the parking lot, Margaret was gone. Mom came home and cried, knowing she had no way to track her heart. My rage wasn't just anger, it was a cold, focused fury. Margaret Collins had nearly killed my mother over a toy. She'd ignored medical proof, dismissed an elderly woman's pleas, and stolen a life essay, into VYC. This wasn't theft, it was attempted murder. I'd been documenting Margaret's abuses for months, every illegal fine, every unauthorized rule, every time she overstepped as HOA president. I planned to present it at the next board meeting, but now is war. "Mom, rest," I said. "I'm getting your monitor back, and I'll make sure Margaret never hurts anyone here again." She looked worried. "Be careful, sweetheart." She threatened to VYCT us if I caused trouble. I smirked. Let her try. The next day, I built a case to end Margaret's reign. I called Dr. Ellis, who wrote a scathing letter detailing how removing Mom's monitor endangered her life. I reached out to every neighbor Margaret had bullied. Mrs. Lopez, fined lot 200 for too many flowers in her window. The Carter family, forced to remove their disabled son's wheelchair ramp because it clashed with the building. Mr. Thompson, whose VYC dog faced constant harassment despite legal protections. Then I read the HOA bylaws every word. What I found was gold. Margaret had been breaking the law for 2 years. Every fine needed a community vote. Every rule required board approval. Every unilateral decision was illegal. Best of all, Section 12.1. Any board member endangering a resident's health or safety faced immediate removal and potential criminal charges. Stealing a heart monitor from an 82-year-old? That qualified. I called the police. Officer Daniels listened, his face darkening. "So, She took medical equipment from an elderly woman? That's felony theft in this state. I asked if they could recover it. With medical documentation, absolutely, he said. I scheduled an emergency community meeting that evening, sending notices about urgent HOA business regarding illegal actions. By 7 p.m., our community center was packed. 60 furious neighbors filled every seat. Margaret strutted in, expecting her usual handful of cowed residents. Her face paled when she saw the crowd. "What is this circus?" she snapped. I stood, holding a thick folder. "This is justice, Margaret. Something you've forgotten." Mrs. Lopez cut in. "Your reign of terror is over." I laid it all out. 2 years of illegal fines totaling due law $15,000, unauthorized rules violating our charter, harassment complaints from dozens of residents. But the worst, I said, my voice steady, is stealing medical equipment from an 82-year-old disabled woman. The room exploded. Neighbors shouted their own stories, years of pent-up frustration bursting free. Margaret tried to defend herself. "That a VYC looked like a toy. How was I supposed to know?" Mr. Thompson roared. "Because she showed you her prescription. Because she begged you to call her doctor. Because any decent person would have listened." I stayed calm. "Whose standards, Margaret?" "Because the bylaws say you've had no authority for 2 years. Every action you've taken is illegal." I passed out copies of the bylaws. The crowd's anger turned to shock as they realized how thoroughly Margaret had violated their rights. "This woman's been a dictator," I said. "She's stolen our money, harassed the disabled, and nearly killed my mother." Officer Daniels entered with 2 other officers. "Margaret Collins?" he asked. She froze. "You're under arrest for theft of medical equipment, harassment, and fraud." As she was cuffed, he announced, "We searched her apartment and found items confiscated from residents without authority. Come identify your property." What they found was sickening. Margaret had hoarded years' worth of stolen Goodskids bikes, garden decorations, personal belongings, and Mom's heart monitor, tossed in a box labeled toys and junk. When I strapped it back on Mom's wrist, she cried tears of relief. "I thought I was going to die," she whispered. "Last night, my heart was racing, and I had no way to know if I was in danger." The community voted unanimously to dissolve the HOA board and start fresh with democratic processes. We pursued legal action against Margaret for harassment and theft. Over the next months, our neighborhood transformed. Mrs. Lopez expanded her flower garden, teaching kids about plants. The Carters rebuilt their son's ramp and led accessibility upgrades. Mr. Thompson offered free SARE VYC dog training. Our community became a place where neighbors helped each other, not lived in fear. Margaret's trial hit the news. HOA president steals heart monitor from elderly woman became a cautionary tale. She pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 2 years of community SARE VYC, helping elderly and disabled residents. The judge's words stuck with me. "You made vulnerable people's lives harder. Now you'll make them easier." 6 months later, Mom still sits in the garden each evening, watching the sunset from her bench, surrounded by friends wearing Mrs. Lopez's flowers, with Mr. Thompson's SARE VYC dog nearby. I check her heart monitor readings on my phone, grateful for the steady beeps that mean she's safe, proud we fought back. The best revenge isn't getting even, it's ensuring bullies can't hurt again and building something beautiful from their destruction. Margaret learned stealing from a vulnerable has consequences. Our community learned that together, good people can topple any tyrant, even one with an HOA badge and a God complex. So what do you think? Was Margaret just enforcing rules, or was she a power-hungry bully who went too far? Should communities ban HOAs to prevent this kind of abuse? Or can they work with the right leadership? Could you forgive someone who endangered your loved one, even if they faced justice? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button if this story fired you up, and subscribe for more tales of standing up to bullies. Where are you watching from? Let's get this conversation going.